Hey guys, welcome back to Storytime with Mr. Isaiah. I have missed you. I hope that you're doing well and that you're enjoying the story. We're reading Sink or Swim right now, so if you are, and we're on chapter 18. So if you are not caught up with this, please make sure you go back and get caught up. You can find me on YouTube under Mr. Isaiah, and my profile picture is the wildcat symbol. Um, let's go ahead and get started with chapter 18. The book's getting really good. Suddenly, bubbles started rising to the surface. A lot of bubbles, and the water began moving, churning, frothing. "It's coming up," Strobe shouted. "Look there." And sure enough, a dark shape emerged from the depths, rising little by little into the space where the sunlight penetrated down into the water. The higher the shape rose, the more distinct it became, with a clearer outline and color. The bow, the forward-deck gun, the tower, finally the deck, though not high enough to clear the waves. It must have been damaged because that was as far as the U-boat could surface. The hatch opened on the tower, and we saw hands first, raised hands as a German sailor climbed out and onto the deck, where he had to stand in a good foot of water. The waves continued to roll over the deck and around his legs, and the legs of the sailor who followed him, and the one after that, and the one after that. Soon the whole crew was standing, lined up with their hands in the air, and then the officers emerged. They were directly port side of our ship. Half of our crew was perched along the rail, rifles and machine guns aimed and ready. Strobe and I stayed with the big deck cannon, though we were too close to the sub to fire at it if anything happened. Lieutenant Tally shouted something from the bridge in German, which surprised me. I didn't think any of us knew he spoke the language. "Probably learned it in college," Strobe said. "Somebody told him to shut up so we could hear." The captain kept speaking in German, and an officer who I guess was the U-boat captain answered him. I whispered to Strobe, asking if he knew what they were saying, but he shook his head and whispered back that his parents didn't want him to learn it. Probably so they could talk about me when I was in the same room, but I wouldn't know what they were saying, he joked. Somebody shushed him again. Lieutenant Tally and the German officer talked for a while longer, and then a couple of U-boat crew members broke ranks and climbed down the hatch back into the sub. They returned a few minutes later with one of their crew clearly injured, strapped to a stretcher, and they handed him off to the others on the deck. The sailors on deck couldn't put the stretcher anywhere because of the waves, so they just held him there, swaying as the sub rocked a couple of times, scrambling to keep their balance. The injured submariner's face was filthy with smoke or grease, and I wondered if he'd been in the engine room. It made me think of Woody. The Germans brought up 3 more stretchers, one by one, with more injured crew members. One was covered in blood, but at least he was still alive. There was a sheet pulled over the face of the last man they brought out. All the German sailors pulled off their caps and bowed their heads. Half an hour later, the U-boat crew, all living except the one, were on board our ship, sitting in a tight circle near the stern, with several of our crew, me included, standing watch over them with our weapons. I felt important, but at the same time, I also felt like I didn't belong there, that I would never be able to shoot my rifle at anybody, and definitely not at any of the German U-boat crew, even knowing that they might have been the ones who sank one of our ships. They just looked young and scared. The captain ordered water for them, and we brought them water. He ordered food for them, and we brought them the lousiest food we could find. Stale bread, meat that was going bad, some black bananas. I didn't feel sorry enough for them that I was going to give away anything very edible, especially since we had even more survivors on our side. Now we had to take care of. The engines got to work. The engineers got to work cooking cables from our stern to the bow of the sub so we could tow it back to Key West. But then we got a message to sink it instead. The Navy didn't want us to waste any more time on this voyage than we had and risk being unnecessary targets for the remaining U-boats. We would take the prisoners with us. A boarding party went over from the PC and stripped all the communications equipment along with any and everything else that might be useful. They might have also rifled through the German submarines' personal effects, because later one guy showed me a wallet filled with German money. Not that it was probably going to do him any good, unless he thought Germany was going to win the war. Once they finished and came back, the engineers cut the cables. Our PC backed off several hundred yards. Then the gunnery chief aimed the big gun and we fired and missed. Too high. So we loaded another shell and fired again and missed again, this time too low. The third time we scored a direct hit and an enormous explosion split the U-boat in half. A couple of the German sailors gasped. Some shook their heads in what looked like despair. One even started silently weeping. The U-boat sank faster than our cargo ship had a few hours earlier, but it was a lot smaller. In fact, I was surprised at how small it was. In my mind, the one that attacked me and Danny had been gigantic, the size of a whale like Moby Dick. Just before we rejoined the convoy, we got the good news. Everyone on the merchant ship had gotten off safely before it sank, though several were injured and needed medical treatment. The other cargo ships were now crowded with the survivors, mostly huddled on deck, the same as with all of our prisoners. But we cheered anyway. All the explosions, all the depth charges, and the rockets and the shells and the torpedoes, and only one person, that German sailor, that the sheet drawn over his face had died. I think it's a miracle, Strobe said. Somebody else, one of the older guys on the crew, just laughed. Wasn't nothing but pure dumb luck, he said. Just pure dumb luck. Another time, another torpedo, another depth charge, another 10 feet this way or that, and either we could have all been dead, or they could have all been dead. You go along thinking your life is something so special until you learn the hard truth that is in war. The U-boats weren't finished with us yet. The rest of the wolf pack kept following us up the Florida coast. We'd see traces of them, a glimpse of a periscope, the wake of one that just dove under, some faint pings on the sonar. They bided their time when we pulled into Jacksonville to drop off our prisoners and the cargo ship survivors. They were still out there when we left Jacksonville to continue on up the coast, back to New York. Another storm kept them away for a couple of days, but then it got calm again and clear with a full moon at night and no clouds, which meant we had to be more vigilant than ever as the convoy crawled slowly north. We spotted one, gave chase, and it lost. One of the other PC guarding the other side of the convoy chased U-boats twice, though they didn't get close enough to fire a cannon or launch rocket bombs or depth chargers. How can they stay out so long? I asked Chief Kerr. I mean, don't they have to refuel or something at some time? It was a night watch, and we were leaning on the rail below the bridge, feeling more than seeing the ocean splitting in two as the bow sliced through water and waves rushed under and around us. There was a soft rolling motion, that if I was in my bunk just then would have put me right to sleep, no matter how bad it smelled down there. I guess they didn't teach you about the milch cows, he said. What's that? I asked. Special subs the Germans designed that they send out to rendezvous points around the Atlantic. They meet up with the wolf packs to refuel and rearm them with more torpedoes so they don't have to go all the way back to their bases in Europe, which can take weeks. So milch cows. Then he added, as if he didn't think I could figure it out on my own, milch means milk in German. We were running dark, the way we always did at night, relying on visual contact to keep the ships from coming too close to one another, and hoping we were hidden all enough that the wolf pack wouldn't be able to see us or to aim and fire their torpedoes. But there was nothing we could do about the full moon except keep to a zigzag course with the entire convoy. The problem with that was it slowed us down even more and might have even made us easier targets. But it was the ranking officer on the other PCs who got to make the decision, and we followed it, though Chief Kerr kept spitting and cursing, not pleased with what we were doing. Full speed ahead is what I say, he fumed. Those cargo ships might not go fast, but they can sure go faster. Other than saying those things to me, though, I was pretty sure that Chief kept his opinions to himself. Okay, and that's the end of chapter 18, so if you'll stick around, in another day we'll have chapter 19 out and ready for you. If you haven't been listening to the stories, or if you have, make sure you tell your friends, because it's a lot of time and a lot of work that goes into making these videos, a lot of stress. My eyes are really bad, and I haven't been able to get into the eye doctor to get my glasses upgraded. And so, there's a lot of things, a lot of sacrifice made for these videos, and we're getting 3 and 4 views a day. It doesn't hardly make it worth it, except for those of you that are watching, and that's the only reason that I keep doing it. So tell your friends, and let's just try to make the videos worthwhile. And like I said, I'm not getting rich on YouTube. I'm just trying to do this for you guys. It's just been a little disappointing that there's not been more people joining in and participating than there has. But that's life, right? I love you guys so much, and I can't wait to see you again tomorrow. Have a good day, and bye.